Commander Vex-9 adjusted his 4 eyes, each blinking in sequence as he stared at the massive holographic display floating before him. The bridge of the Imperial dreadnought Sovereign's Wrath hummed with the usual efficiency of a well-oiled war machine. Except today, something was different. Today, they had received what could only be described as the most ridiculous response in the history of galactic diplomacy. "Sir." Lieutenant Crax's tentacles twitched nervously as he approached the commander's elevated platform. The human response has been verified 3 times. The translation matrix confirms accuracy. Vex-9's mandibles clicked together in what other species might mistake for amusement, but was actually pure bewilderment. "Read it again, Lieutenant." Out loud. "I want the entire bridge crew to hear this masterpiece." Crax's throat sacs inflated as he cleared his vocal chambers. Ahem. From Earth's diplomatic corps, Ambassador Jessica Kane, to the Galactic Empire's Tribute Collection Division. Your demand for tribute has been received and thoroughly considered. After extensive deliberation, we have decided that you can take your tribute demand and shove it where your sun doesn't shine. Furthermore, we formally declare war on your entire empire. Have a nice day. P.S. We're coming for you. Signed, the humans. The bridge fell silent. Not the comfortable silence of a well-disciplined crew, but the kind of silence that occurs when everyone's brain simultaneously short-circuits. Did they just? Navigation Officer Krell's voice cracked, his usually deep baritone climbing to an almost comical pitch. Did they just declare war on the entire Galactic Empire because we asked for tribute? Vex-9 nodded slowly, his head turning a full 180 degrees to survey his crew. Oh yes, they did. These humans, who joined the galactic community exactly 14 rotations ago, who have exactly 1 inhabited system, who possess a fleet that couldn't challenge a mining consortium security detail, these humans just declared war on an empire spanning 47,000 star systems. Communications Officer Ziff's scales shifted from their usual green to a nervous purple. "Sir, perhaps there's been a translation error? Maybe their primitive language lacks proper diplomatic terminology?" No. Vex-9 waved one of his 6 arms dismissively. "I've been studying these humans since they made first contact. Their language is surprisingly sophisticated when it comes to insults and threats. They have 47 different ways to tell someone to perform anatomically impossible acts. This message is exactly what they intended to send." The bridge crew exchanged glances that, despite their various species differences, all conveyed the same message. These humans were clearly insane. "Commander," Senior Tactical Officer Brex spoke up, his cybernetic eye whirring as it adjusted focus. "Shall I prepare the standard compliance bombardment? A few planetary strikes usually convince new species to reconsider their position." Vex-9's laugh was a sound like grinding metal mixed with escaping gas. "Oh, Brex, my dear, sweet, logical officer. Under normal circumstances, yes. But these aren't normal circumstances. Do you know what these humans did when the Korath pirates tried to raid their outer colonies? No, sir. They turned the pirates' own ships into improvised missiles and launched them at the pirate fleet. When the Ethereal Syndicate tried to establish a protection racket in their system, the humans somehow convinced the Syndicate's own enforcers to join them instead. And when the Zephyrian Trade Collective attempted to corner their rare earth markets." Vex-9 paused for dramatic effect. The humans crash-landed an asteroid into the Collective's primary processing station. They claimed it was a navigation error. Lieutenant Crax gulped audibly. "Navigation error, sir?" The asteroid was equipped with mining charges and hit the station's reactor core with surgical precision. The explosion was visible from 3 systems away. The bridge crew was beginning to look distinctly uncomfortable. These weren't the actions of a primitive species stumbling through space. These were the actions of something far more dangerous, creative lunatics with access to advanced technology. "Sir," Communications Officer Ziff interrupted, his scales now a deep red indicating extreme stress. "We're receiving another transmission from the human system. It's addressed to you personally." Vex-9's eyes all focused on the communication station simultaneously. "Put it through." The holographic display shimmered and resolved into the image of a human female. She appeared to be middle-aged by their species standards, with graying hair pulled back in a severe style and eyes that held what could only be described as predatory amusement. The nameplate on her uniform read Ambassador J. Kane. "Hello, Commander Vex-9," the human said, her voice carrying an unsettling quality that made Vex-9's chitinous spine tingle. "I understand you received our formal response to your tribute demand. I wanted to personally clarify a few points, just to avoid any confusion." Vex-9 straightened in his command chair. "Ambassador Kane, I presume. Your species' response was unexpected. Perhaps you failed to understand the consequences of defying the Galactic Empire." Kane's smile was the kind of expression that made prey animals instinctively seek cover. "Oh, we understand perfectly. You see, Commander, we've been doing our homework since joining the galactic community. We know all about your Empire's tributary system. Very efficient, very profitable, very predictable." "Predictable?" Vex-9's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sure sign of growing irritation. "Every species you've encountered has followed the same pattern: initial resistance, a show of force, capitulation, and then decades of tribute payments. It's actually quite boring when you really analyze it. Where's the creativity? Where's the innovation? Where's the fun?" The word fun sent a collective shiver through the bridge crew. When humans use that word, bad things tended to happen to other people. "This is not a game, human," Vex-9 said, his voice dropping to what he considered a menacing growl. "Everything's a game, Commander. The only difference is whether you know you're playing or not." Kane leaned forward, and Vex-9 could swear he saw something predatory flash in her eyes. "Tell me, have you ever heard of something called asymmetric warfare?" "I am familiar with the concept," Vex-9 replied cautiously. "Good. Then you'll appreciate what we're about to do to your empire." Kane's smile widened, showing entirely too many teeth. "You see, while you've been building your nice, orderly, hierarchical empire with its predictable tributary states and standardized compliance procedures, we've been studying chaos theory. Specifically, how small actions can have massively disproportionate consequences in complex systems." Tactical Officer Brex's cybernetic eye was now whirring continuously, a sign of extreme computational stress. "Commander, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures throughout their system. Multiple ships are launching, but their configuration doesn't match any known military vessel type." Kane's laugh was like broken glass mixed with honey. "Oh, those aren't military vessels, Officer Brex. Those are what we call special delivery packages. Each one contains a little surprise for your various tributary species." "What kind of surprises?" Vex-9 asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know the answer. "Well, for example, the package heading to the Alterian system contains complete manufacturing specifications for faster-than-light communication devices. The one going to the Betelgeuse colonies has detailed plans for energy weapons that are about 3 generations ahead of what they currently possess. And the one destined for the Vegan Confederacy." Kane paused, her smile becoming absolutely wicked. "Let's just say they're going to learn some very interesting things about economic warfare." The color drained from what few faces on the bridge were capable of changing color. Vex-9's own carapace shifted from its usual deep blue to a sickly yellow-green. "You're arming our tributary species," he whispered. "Arming them, educating them, providing them with the tools and knowledge they need to reassess their current political arrangements. We're being very generous with our gifts, Commander. After all, what's the point of having advanced technology if you don't share it with your friends?" Lieutenant Crax's tentacles were now writhing in uncontrolled panic. "Sir, if even half of our tributary species suddenly acquire advanced military capabilities, the Empire would face simultaneous rebellions across thousands of systems," Vex-9 finished, his voice hollow. "The logistics alone would be impossible to manage." Kane nodded approvingly. "Now you're beginning to understand. But wait, there's more. You see, we've also been having some very interesting conversations with your Empire's various political rivals. The Andromedan Republic, the Free Systems Alliance, the corporate hegemonies, Fascinating groups. All of them. Did you know they've been looking for an excuse to test your military capabilities for decades? You didn't, Vex-9 breathed. Oh, but we did. Shared intelligence, tactical assessments, detailed analyses of your fleet deployments and supply lines. We've been very thorough. It turns out that when you're not actively intimidating them, your neighbors are quite reasonable people. The bridge was now in a state of barely controlled panic. Status boards were lighting up with alerts as intelligence reports began flooding in from across the Empire. Tributary species were indeed beginning to show signs of unusual activity. Military commanders were reporting strange energy signatures in dozens of systems. And most alarming of all, reconnaissance units were detecting increased fleet movements from every major power that bordered the Empire. This is insane, Vex-9 said, though his voice lacked conviction. You're talking about destabilizing the entire galactic order. Kane's expression suddenly became serious, and somehow that was more terrifying than her previous amusement. Commander, you seem to be under the impression that we care about your galactic order. Let me be very clear about something. We didn't ask to join your little tribute system. We were perfectly happy on our own, figuring things out at our own pace, but you insisted on including us in your empire, and now you're demanding payment for the privilege. She stood up, and the camera angle shifted to show that she was wearing what appeared to be some kind of military uniform covered in symbols that Vex-9's translation system couldn't identify. Here's the thing about humans, Commander. We don't like bullies. We especially don't like bullies who demand lunch money, and we really don't like being told that resistance is futile. You want to know why? Vex-9 found himself leaning forward, despite his better judgment, because we invented the concept of hold my beer and watch this. We're the species that looked at the laws of physics and decided they were more like guidelines. We're the ones who figured out how to make fire burn in vacuum and taught mathematics to commit war crimes. When the universe gives us lemons, we weaponize the citric acid and use it to dissolve our enemy's infrastructure. The holographic display flickered as Kane moved closer to the camera. So, here's what's going to happen. Commander, you're going to go back to your superiors and explain that the humans are officially off limits. No tribute, no taxation, no imperial oversight, nothing. In exchange, we'll consider not sharing some of our more creative, technological innovations with every species that has a grudge against your empire. And if we refuse? Vex-9 asked. Though he suspected he already knew the answer, Kane's smile returned, and it was the kind of expression that suggested she'd been looking forward to this question. Well, in that case, we'll be forced to demonstrate why every other species in the galaxy eventually learns to leave us alone. Fair warning, though, it's going to be educational for everyone involved. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. After several long moments, Lieutenant Kurax spoke up in a voice barely above a whisper. Sir, what are your orders? Vex-9 stared at the blank holographic display for a long time before responding. Get me a direct line to Imperial Command. And Krax? Yes, sir? Start drafting my resignation letter. I have a feeling I'm going to need it. As alerts continued to cascade across the bridge displays and reports of mysterious activities flooded in from across the Empire, one thought echoed through every mind present. They had made a terrible mistake. The humans weren't just declaring war on the Galactic Empire. They were about to give the entire galaxy a crash course in why nobody messed with Earth, and somewhere in the back of his mind, Vex-9 couldn't shake the feeling that this was exactly what the humans had been hoping for all along. 3 rotations later, Imperial High Command was in complete meltdown. Admiral Thex-Prime paced back and forth across the war room's polished floor, his 12 legs creating a rhythmic clicking that had driven half the staff to distraction. The massive tactical display showed a galaxy painted in increasingly alarming shades of red, yellow, and orange. What had once been a stable map of Imperial control now looked like someone had spilled paint across a kindergarten art project. Report. Thex-Prime snapped at Intelligence Director Morph, whose usual composed demeanor had cracked somewhere around the 15th simultaneous crisis. Sir, the situation has escalated beyond our worst-case scenarios. Morph's tentacles writhed as he consulted his datapad. The Altarian system has successfully established instantaneous communication with 47 other tributary worlds. They're coordinating resistance efforts in real time across half the galaxy. And the Betelgeusians? They've reverse-engineered the human weapon designs and improved them. Their new plasma cannons are 30% more efficient than our current military standard. They're offering the blueprints to anyone willing to join what they're calling the Liberation Front. Thex-Prime's antennae drooped. The vegans, morph skin shifted to a nauseating shade of green. They've crashed the Imperial credit system twice in the same day. They're calling it economic restructuring, but our entire monetary framework is now running on algorithms they control. Oh, and they've somehow convinced 18 different species that debt forgiveness is a fundamental right. The war room's atmosphere had become so thick with despair that it was practically visible. Status reports continued streaming in, each one more catastrophic than the last. The humans hadn't just declared war. They'd orchestrated the complete systematic breakdown of Imperial authority across thousands of worlds. What about our fleet deployments? Thex-Prime asked, though he suspected he didn't want to hear the answer. That's complicated, sir. Tactical Coordinator Blix's voice carried the tremor of someone delivering news that would likely result in their immediate execution. The Free Systems Alliance has positioned their entire navy along our eastern border. The Andromedan Republic is conducting training exercises near our core worlds. And the corporate hegemonies have somehow acquired detailed schematics of every military installation in the Outer Rim. How is that possible? The humans, sir. They've been sharing intelligence for months. Our security networks have been compromised at every level. They know our fleet positions, supply routes, defensive capabilities, even our commanders' psychological profiles. Thex-Prime stopped pacing. Psychological profiles? Yes, sir. They've apparently been studying our leadership structure and identified what they call pressure points. They know exactly which commanders will panic under stress, which ones will make predictable tactical errors, and which ones can be bribed, blackmailed, or reasoned with. The Admiral's mandibles began grinding together, producing a sound like rusty machinery. Get me a direct line to this Ambassador Kane. I want to speak with her immediately. Sir, she's already on line 1. She's been waiting for your call. The main display shimmered and resolved into the image of the human ambassador. She appeared to be sitting in what looked like a garden, casually sipping from a steaming cup while explosions lit the sky behind her. The contrast between her relaxed demeanor and the obvious warfare occurring in the background was deeply unsettling. Admiral Thex-Prime, Kane said pleasantly, raising her cup in a mock salute. Lovely weather we're having, isn't it? What have you done? Thex-Prime's voice carried the weight of someone watching their entire world collapse. We've given your subjects a choice, Admiral. That's all. The freedom to decide their own destinies without Imperial oversight. Apparently they found the idea rather appealing. This is madness. You've destabilized the entire galactic order. Kane's laugh was like music played through broken speakers. Order. You call systematic exploitation and intimidation order? Admiral, what you had wasn't order. It was just a very large, very successful protection racket. Our empire brought peace to thousands of worlds. Your empire brought compliance to thousands of worlds. There's a difference. Peace implies choice. What you provided was surrender disguised as stability. Behind Kane, something large and metallic streaked across the sky, followed by an impressive explosion that lit up the entire landscape. She didn't even flinch. Is that? Thex-Prime began. Oh, that's just the Korath pirates trying to reclaim their old territory. Apparently they thought the current chaos provided an excellent opportunity for expansion. They were wrong. Kane took another sip of her drink. We're currently using them as target practice for our new defensive systems. Very educational for everyone involved. You're insane. All of you. Your entire species has lost its collective mind. Kane's expression became thoughtful. You know, that's not the first time someone said that to us. The Ethereal Syndicate used almost those exact words right before they tried to establish a puppet government in our outer colonies. Would you like to know what happened to them? Thex-Prime found himself nodding despite his better judgment. We convinced their own puppet government to declare independence and join the Human Federation instead. Turned out, when you give people actual representation and don't steal their resources, they tend to be quite loyal. Who would have thought? Reports continued flooding the war room as Kane spoke. The Imperial fleet was being pulled in dozens of directions simultaneously. Every time they moved to suppress one rebellion, 3 more would spring up elsewhere. It was like trying to contain a forest fire with a water pistol. What do you want? Thex-Prime asked finally. Want? Admiral, we don't want anything from you. We want you to leave us alone. All of us. Every species that's decided they're tired of paying tribute to an empire that gives them nothing in return, except the privilege of not being conquered. That's impossible. The empire spans 47,000 systems. We can't simply abandon our territorial claims. Kane's smile became razor sharp. Admiral, let me explain something about humans. We're really good at making impossible things happen. We once convinced an entire star to move 3 degrees off its original trajectory because it was blocking our view of a nebula we wanted to study. That's impossible. So is faster than light travel. But here we are having a conversation across several hundred light years in real time. So is artificial gravity. But you're standing upright on a space station. So is terraforming. But half the worlds in this galaxy have been modified to support life they weren't originally designed for. Kane leaned forward, and her voice took on a tone that made Thex-Prime's chitinous spine tingle with recognition. It was the voice of a predator explaining to its prey exactly how the hunt was going to proceed. Here's what's going to happen. Admiral, you're going to order a general withdrawal of Imperial forces to your original core systems. You're going to formally recognize the independence of every world that wants it. And you're going to restructure your government into something that doesn't require exploiting other species to survive. And if we refuse, then we continue our current strategy until you change your mind. How long do you think your empire can survive simultaneous rebellions on 3,000 worlds while being surrounded by hostile neighbors who know all your military secrets? The war room's tactical display was now almost entirely red. Fleet commanders were reporting mutinies, supply lines were collapsing, and entire sectors were declaring independence. The Empire wasn't just losing the war, it was dissolving from within. This is extortion. Thex-Prime said weakly. No, Admiral. Extortion is what you've been doing to tributary species for centuries. This is consequences. We're simply ensuring that actions have appropriate reactions. Our citizens will never accept such terms. Kane's expression softened slightly. Admiral, your citizens aren't the problem. Most of them are decent people who've been told their entire lives that the Empire's way of doing things is the only way to maintain galactic stability. But stability built on exploitation isn't actually stable. It's just delayed chaos. She gestured toward the burning sky behind her. What you're seeing now is what happens when the delay ends. You can either adapt to the new reality, or you can continue fighting a war you can't win against enemies you created by trying to maintain a system that was never sustainable in the first place. How do we know you'll honor any agreement we make? Because, Admiral, we don't need to conquer your empire. We just need you to stop trying to conquer everyone else. Give people the freedom to choose their own governments, their own economic systems, their own destinies. And most of them will be too busy building better lives to bother with interstellar conquest. Kane stood up, and the camera angle shifted to show that the garden she'd been sitting in was actually on the observation deck of what appeared to be a massive space station. In the distance, several fleets were engaged in what looked like a training exercise, except the explosions were far too precise and coordinated to be mere practice. You have 24 hours to begin withdrawing your forces from non-core systems, Admiral. After that, we start Phase 2 of our liberation program. What's Phase 2? Kane's smile returned, and it contained enough predatory satisfaction to make several of the war room staff step backward unconsciously. Phase 2 is when we stop being subtle about it. The transmission ended, leaving the war room in the kind of silence usually reserved for funeral services. After several minutes, Intelligence Director Morph spoke up in a voice barely above a whisper. Sir, what are your orders? Admiral Thex-Prime stared at the tactical display for a long time, watching red indicators spread across systems that had been under Imperial control for generations. Finally, he turned to face his staff. Drafted General Withdrawal Order. All non-essential Imperial forces are to return to core systems immediately. Prepare formal recognition documents for any world that declares independence. And someone get me the Imperial Council. We need to discuss governmental restructuring, sir. Blix's voice cracked with disbelief. You heard me. The humans are right about one thing. Our current system isn't sustainable. If we're going to survive as a civilization, we need to learn how to coexist instead of dominate. As his staff scrambled to implement orders that would fundamentally reshape the galaxy's political structure, Thex-Prime couldn't help but feel a grudging respect for the human strategy. They hadn't simply declared war. They'd forced the Empire to confront the inherent contradictions in its own existence. And somehow, despite losing the largest empire in galactic history, he found himself looking forward to seeing what kind of galaxy would emerge from the chaos. After all, if the humans were right about giving people choices, the results might actually be better than what they'd had before, even if getting there was going to give him nightmares for the rest of his very long life.